So it is going to reset it, but it's also going to make it invisible. Makes the explosion invisible and reset current frame to beginning of sprite sheet. Okay? Just equals 0. Alright, and then also we want to set our source rect in here so it updates every frame. So we're going to say source rect is equal to new rectangle, and we're going to say current frame times sprite width okay, so it took an X position, so it's the current frame times sprite width. So it's going to grab that first whole box, right, our first image, X, and then we're going to say 0 on the Y, because it's going to be the same Y for all the images, because it's just grabbing from the top going down. Alright, and then we're going to say sprite width for our width, obviously, and sprite height for our height. Okay. We're also going to set our origin. So we're going to say origin is equal to new vector 2, and that's going to be the source rect.width divided by 2 source rect.height also divided by 2. Okay. Now I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Like I told you in the past, I haven't done many animated sprites in XNA, so I looked through a lot of different examples through like Microsoft stuff and how they handle animated sprites, and I took some bits and pieces from those and kind of just put something together that we could use for our explosion class. Okay, so if I explain some of this stuff, I might not sound like I know a whole lot about it, which I'm gonna be honest, I know what the stuff does and how it's all put together, but it's probably harder for me to explain it to you guys than if you just went out and looked at some examples for yourself, because that's what I had to do. So basically I'll do the best I can to explain this. Like I said, this is just going to keep track of our timer, right? If the timer, that's going to be, it's just going to be running the whole time because we're in the update thing. If it's greater than our interval, which is 20, then it's going to go ahead and push the frame to the next frame in our thing. So we're on our current frame's 1, so at the beginning of our sprite sheet, it's going to go to the next box. So it's going to show the next one. Then it's going to wait 20 milliseconds, go to the next one. So it's going to keep running that, right, until it gets to the end, which is right here. It's just going to keep running through the frames, so it's going to create what looks like an animation because it's taking each one of the pictures and just clipping through it kind of like a film strip, right? And then when it gets to 17, we're going to make the explosion disappear, right? Because it exploded, now we want it to go away. And then we're going to reset the current frame next to 0 for the next time when we call the explosion. So it's ready to go again. And the source rect is just taking a rectangle and it's taking the current frame and the sprite width, so it's putting a box around there, and it's just this is our source rect is what's grabbing each frame in our sheet. Okay. In the origin, you know what? Source rect width divided by 2. Height divided by 2. Not really sure, to be honest with you, but we got to put it in there to make it work. I know that much. All right. So our next, let's clean up some of this blank space here. After our update, of course, is our draw. Sorry, I probably didn't explain that very well, guys. But like I said, I haven't done many animated sprites, so I was learning I'm learning with you guys on that one. All right. So our draw function. Public void draw like normal, and it is sprite batch. Okay, and in our draw function, all we're going to say is I'll comment it. We're just going to say if visible, then draw. Okay, so we're going to say if is visible equals true, or you could just put if is visible. Then we're going to do a sprite batch dot draw, and then we're going to fill all of them in here. So it takes texture 2D, which is our texture, takes a position, which is our position. It takes a destination. See, let me go down here. Destination rectangle, which is going to be our source rect, and it takes a color, so it's color.white like normal. It's going to take a float rotation, which is going to be 0 because we're not doing any rotating. It's going to take a vector2 origin, which is our origin. That's why we need to set an origin. Sprite effects is just going to be none, so we'll just say sprite effects dot none, and then 0 for layer depth. Not even sure what layer depth is. Okay, and I'm sure that has something to do with multiple backgrounds and saying which layer is going to be behind the other, something like that. But I've never really looked in the documentation on what that actually is. Alright, so what does it say in here? Error list. To cannot convert. Texture, position, source rect, color.white, 0, origin, oh, I forgot one, 1.0 F for our scale, because we're not changing the scale, okay? Alright, so that's it. That is it for our explosion class. Now we just need to make some changes in our game1.cs. Okay, let's save this off. So just as a quick recap, I kind of went through on what these are, the timer and the interval. Origin, I'm really not sure, but I know we need it. Current frame is the frame that we're currently on in our sprite sheet. This is just the width and the height of each individual square on our sprite sheet, which there's 17 of them. Our source rect is the rectangle that is going to be grabbing each of those frames, and then our is visible so that we can put it in our list in game 1 and we can remove stuff by saying, you know, invisible isn't true. Okay, no load content. I just explained that's pretty much all the stuff in our update, and then our draw is pretty basic. We're just drawing our texture to the position, and then the source rect, color, origin, sprite effects, and nothing. The rest is just kind of default values. Okay. All right, so let's save that off. I'm going to build just to make sure I don't have any weird errors. Okay, so if you haven't already, which I didn't, let's go ahead and right click our content, and we're going to add an existing item. And I know I have my explosion in here now because I just moved it. We'll add our explosion. It's just called explosion 3. Okay, and let's go to our game1.cs so we can start adding what we need here. And like I said, we're going to be creating a list to hold all our explosions in to make it easy to remove them. This might not be the best method, but I found out it works for what we're doing. And like I said, this isn't like a massive game that's going to be eating up all kinds of RAM and graphics memory and stuff in our computer. So I don't think a few lists are going to really matter with a 2D shooter, right? Okay, so list. It's going to be explosions. A list of explosion, and we're just going to call it explosion list equals new list explosion. Okay, just like our other lists, but like this list holds asteroids, this list holds enemies, and this list holds explosions. Okay, so we got that. We can now go down to actually we need to create a new function, and it's going to be called manage explosions. So we're going to go down, 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 way down, under our last function that we created called load enemies. Remember we did that in our enemies videos. Okay, and we're going to create a new function called manage explosions. Okay, so it's going to be public void, and we're just going to call it manage explosions. Doesn't take any parameters. Okay, and in here, basically, it's just going to say if any of the explosions in the list were destroyed, then remove them from the list, just like we got right here. It's basically a copy of this code right here, just like we have in our load enemies, but we're going to have the explosion list instead of enemy list. Okay, so I'm going to say for int I equals 0. Then we're going to say if I is less than explosion list dot count, then I plus plus. So we're going to iterate through our explosion list. Then we're going to say if exclamation point explosion list at index I, just like we've done in our other updates, is visible. So we're saying if the explosion in the explosion list is not visible, that's what the exclamation point means. Then we're going to do two things. We're just going to say explosion list.remove, remove at index I, just like we have in our others, and then I negative negative. So we go back, iterate through the list again, okay? And that's all there is to our manage explosions. Alright? Alright, so we got 1, 2, 3. Okay. Yes, that's all we need for our manage explosions. Okay? So now we created our list at the top. We created our manage explosions function. Okay? And then we're just going to, now we can do and call our explosions when bullets hit stuff, right? So we can go into our update function, which is right here in our game1.cs, and we can go down to see checking where the player bullet collides with an enemy ship, which is right here. Check player bullet collision with enemy ship. So right now what we have it doing is giving 20 to our player score and setting the bullets to visible or invisible. Okay, and what we also want to do is when a bullet hits the ship and it's destroyed, because we only have one shot to kill the enemy ships right now, then we want to spawn an explosion at that position. Okay, so we'll say explosion list.add, and it takes the parameters, so we're going to say new explosion, and it's content.load texture 2D, and that's going to be what we just brought our sprite in, and it's called explosion 3. Okay, and then it's going to take a vector 2 position, which we want a new vector 2, and we want to spawn this explosion wherever the enemy player died at. So we're going to say e.position.x, and float y is e.position e.position.y. Okay, and I forgot there's 3 at the end there. Alright, so that's it. So we're going to iterate through the bullet list, right? And then whenever one of our bullets hit an enemy ship, it's going to spawn explosion, assigning the texture for our explosion sprite sheet, and it's going to spawn the explosion wherever the enemy died at, which is the enemy position X.